Hello and welcome to another edition of Normie Impressions of, a podcast in which I usually get three Normie friends to talk about anime, and just diving deeper down that rabbit hole. But this time, we are not going to be talking about any specific one episode of a show like we usually do. We're going to be talking about our favorite anime. So, the reason I wanted to talk about our favorite anime is because I feel it's important for any reader, listener, to know their critic's taste. Because how the hell are you supposed to have any sort of context when they talk about something if you don't know what they like? We're going to be talking about three of our favorite anime. So how I had this set up is that we each came to the table initially with five. We're picking three to make sure there's no overlap. And we're just going to go through one at a time, talk about an anime that we really love. And we'll just cycle through everyone. And the conversation will naturally flow around it after, say, I go up and I'll say, my favorite anime is Yu Yu Hakusho, because I'm a fucking tool bag. I'll talk about it for a couple minutes, and then the conversation will go from there. That's what we're doing this week, before we get into any deeper here. I lied, I'm not talking about Yu Yu Hakusho. I'm going to be talking about an anime called Monster. Now, Monster is a very long anime in terms of what usually the episode lengths go to, like 13, 24 episodes, 26 episodes. This is 74, and it feels like 74 episodes because it's a very methodically paced show, but brilliantly so. Monster follows Dr. Tenma, a absolutely ingenious brain surgeon who left Japan to go work in Germany. And in his time there, he's been rising through the ranks, getting heaps of praise thrown upon him, until this very fateful night, where both the mayor of Dusseldorf, the town or the city that he works in, comes into the hospital with a very life-threatening illness, and then two twins come in that are about the age of 5 or 6. And the boy twin has a gunshot wound to his head. Now, Tenma's been very tired of the politics of how the hospital's been working, and his higher-ups telling him, you have to work on the mayor. That's just how it's going to be, despite the fact that the twins came in first. So by logical practice and moral practice, he's supposed to operate them first. So he makes the decision of saying, fuck you, you're my superior, but I don't give a shit, I'm going to save the life of this little boy who was shot in the head. And so he does that, and the mayor dies as someone else operates on him. But then the real twist comes in, and as this boy grows up, this boy becomes a vicious, methodical, highly intelligent serial killer. And Tenma feels incredibly guilty about this. After losing all of his social status by disobeying his superior, his life has gone to shit, and now he finds out, on top of all that, this boy is a fucking maniacal, murdering machine. And so he feels that, well, I brought his life back from the brink. I have to be the one to finally end what I should have done from that very fateful night.
As reasonable people do.
Yes. And
alright. He blames himself, so it makes sense, alright.
Well, he blames himself because he has very strong beliefs in life about because he's the idyllic sort of doctor. Like, in every sense you think of a doctor and how they should operate, he is that kind of god.
Then he should know that he did the right thing. Just because, like, if he could go back knowing what he knew today, sure, but if he was in the same position, again, without the knowledge, he should make the same decision. Like, does he not know that?
Yeah, he's not blaming himself for that, but he's blaming himself for the fact that, like, he kind of feels almost like he was in a position of power, almost godlike power, where he chose a life over the other. And he realizes that, in hindsight, he chose the wrong life, and that he knows that this kid is fucking people up, while he's getting blamed for some of the initial murders that this kid is responsible for. So he's trying to also clear his name in the meanwhile.
So it's kind of vengeance then, too.
It's a bit of vengeance. That's one of the really great things about the show, is that it is very morally ambiguous. There are obviously sides of evil and sides of good, but like, even the good guy, Tenma, throughout the entire show, he meets a very ensemble sort of cast that has different views about how he should go about things, and some people were like, he doesn't always tell them, like, I'm gonna go kill this kid. But you get a sense that, like, some people they put their philosophical beliefs into the series and saying, like, something that we're all familiar with, like Psychopaths, where one of the main detectives of Psychopaths feels that he needs to kill Makishima to go outside the law to end something that is utterly atrocious, and that's exactly what Tenma's doing here. He feels that he needs to stop this kid because he thinks that he's the only one who can really do it. So it's this long, methodical sort of thriller with all these crazy fucking twists over the course of 74 episodes, and really great characters. Like, there's a detective, Longe, who is initially investigating Tenma for the murders that this boy is first responsible for. And he's kind of like this ingenious but, like, very disattached person that we get, obviously, more background as the show goes along, who does this whole thing with his hands where he's typing on this mental keyboard that doesn't exist, but, like, almost how, like, the Mind Castle and, like, things like,
Sherlock.
in Sherlock. Like, exactly like that.
Mind Palace.
Yeah, the Mind Palace.
Idiot.
Fuck you. Anyway. It's this, all these characters are so great, and then there's guys like Grimmer who comes along later in the show, like this freelance journalist who has his own dark, sordid past. And the show there's so much going on, but it handles it all so well, and just has such a strong plot that I don't blame people for sometimes thinking that it's slow, it's boring. But it's really not slow or boring, it's just very purposeful in everything that it does, in building up this villain and building up Tenma, because the villain is absolutely great. He's on the level of, think of like the rivalry that happens between L and Kira in Death Note. Like, it's that greatness of, like, this rivalry going on between these great minds. Or like a villain like Griffith from Berserk, and how fucking just devious that he is, and how ingenious he is in his own deviousness, but also
while appearing benevolent the whole time.
Yes, and like I don't want to go into spoilers here, obviously, but this show just handles so much of its story. Just use a word that I don't like using perfectly. Like, it took me a while to get through it, but it's a show that I feel if you enjoy thoughtful plots, and especially if you're coming from a more Western entertainment background, like if you like things like Game of Thrones or like True Detective or Breaking Bad, this is a show I would suggest to you. So that's my first anime that I want to talk about. Monster. It's just incredible.
Anything like Monsters, Inc.?
Yes, exactly like Monster. I was lying the entire time. It's actually Monsters, Inc.
Well, as soon as you said Monster, I was trying to piece together a joke about like going through portal/closets, but I couldn't. You didn't give me the pieces, so I couldn't put it together. But I'm glad it was brought up. Anyway.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like something... You made me really want to see it, especially when you named all the shows that if you like this, you like that. That's kind of a classic advertising trick, but damn it if it doesn't work.
Sounds like a Hannibal Lecter type situation.
It's another thing like that. I think, like, I don't know if any of you have seen the Hannibal show that came out.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It sounds
not like the show. I've seen the movies.
It sounds like that, like the plot of the show, not the movies.
It's a very heady sort of thing, just like Hannibal is. So let's moving along here. 2. Billy, what's the first anime that you want to talk about?
Oh man, alright. The first anime that I want to talk about is Yu Yu Hakusho, and I guess I'm a douchebag for that. Yeah, I wonder where that came from earlier, huh? But man, I don't know, I grew up getting Shonen Jumps, the manga issues in my mail every week. And it was, or every month rather, and it was just the highlight of my month, and just like going out there and getting it. And that was one of the first like manga that I fell in love with, was reading Yu Yu Hakusho. And then I found out, hey, they actually have an anime of this too. And I was like, no fucking way. So I started watching it, and it's just seriously like, it's my favorite anime. I know like it's not, I'm not saying it's perfect in any regard, and there might be some people that don't like it, but I'm a sucker for tournament arcs, and Yu Yu Hakusho is basically like one tournament arc after the next. And like it starts off with like a brief synopsis. It's like that. Like we just watched Great Teacher Onizuka, and it's made by the same studio, which I just found out, which makes sense because it starts off with like this group of like misfits and this like not a biker gang per se, but definitely like a gang that's like a bunch of punks, And one of them actually does a selfless act, and his name is Yusuke Urameshi, and he's just this punk that's known around town for being this badass that beats people up and doesn't listen to his parents, doesn't go to school, fights teachers, but he sees a kid crossing the road to get a ball, and a car is coming around the corner and it's going to hit the kid. So Yusuke, being a piece of shit all his life, decides that in his last moment he's going to do a heroic thing, and he saved the kid, and the car killed him. And he went to the spirit realm, where he's met by, these spirit gods that basically tell him, you did a selfless thing, so we're going to give you a second chance at life, basically, and they bring him back to life as a spirit detective, which is somebody that investigates demonic occurrences and the such, like supernatural things going on Earth. And it just evolves from there, and he becomes like this guy who was a piece of shit his whole life and is trying to like redeem himself and become like something more. And he ends up combating all these demons and meeting a group of really interesting people, like Hiei, who's like a fucking short midget dude that's like an extremely powerful demon with a third eye that can summon a dark dragon. And like all these characters are just super eclectic and super like original. And Yoko Karama, who we don't really know much about most of the show until towards the end of it, but he's just a character just illuminated in like complete mystery. And he's like, it goes from there, and then there's a bunch of tournament arcs, and it's just...
Well, this sounds really interesting to me. It definitely sounds like something I'd want to see. I do want to ask, just because based off of the synopsis you gave, which it makes it sound really good, where do the tournaments come from? There's
these like two demon brothers named the Toguro brothers, and they're like the first main antagonists in the show. And they're basically like, the show has you believe they're like the most powerful beings ever. It's kind of like akin to Dragon Ball Z, where it's like, Frieza's the most powerful thing ever, and then he defeats Frieza, and it's like, yeah, but Cell is 10,000 times stronger than Frieza. And he beats Cell, and it's like, yeah, but you guys forgot about Majin Buu. But in the beginning of the show, they'll have you believe that the Toguro... I mean, obviously, towards the end of the show, the Toguro brothers are just a flea on the back of a dog's back. But in the beginning, they'd have you believe that they're the most powerful beings in creation, and Yusuke is tasked with his friend Kuwabara, who's also a punk, basically to defeat them. And it seems like an impossible task. And I'm not going to give away like crazy spoilers or anything, but long story short, it ends up being that the only way Yusuke and this guy, Toguro, are going to fight is through this thing called the Dark Tournament, which is a tournament that the demon world puts on every year, and the winner of the tournament gets one wish granted.
It's really nice of the demons to do that.
But yeah, it ends up being like a tournament arc where it's like literally just like fight to the death versus each other, and then we get to the end where maybe you'll fight against Team Toguro if you win. And Team Toguro is just this reigning champion team that hasn't ever even lost a single match, let alone like one of them dying or anything. And so it ends up going that way. The entire show is just broken down in the tournament arcs, and I'm a huge sucker for that.
I mean, I've never seen Yu Yu Hakusho. It's a blind spot in my anime history, but for me, for Sean, and for Ryan, we've all seen Hunter x Hunter, and as you may not know, Yoshihiro Togashi is both the manga author of Yu Yu Hakusho, which was one of his breakout manga, and then he did Hunter x Hunter. And just because of how much I love Hunter x Hunter, and as you're explaining a bit of Yu Yu Hakusho, I get where this author is coming from and how his trajectory as a creator has evolved over the years, and I definitely do want to watch Yu Yu Hakusho.
Yeah, it doesn't just do brainless tournament arc fighting either. It has some really good character dynamics in the show, like really good rivalry like dynamics. Like Yusuke and Kuwabara is a really good example. Like they fucking hated each other in high school. Like they were basically the leaders of rival gangs. Like, and they fight each other constantly. And the only person that ever put up a fight against Yusuke was Kuwabara, and vice versa. And they hated each other, and they ended up having to come together. It's super interesting. They actually make you care about the characters. It's not just mindless fighting. And the fighting sequences are some of the best. I mean, some of the techniques they use, the way that the fights are done, like the way that Kurama fights is particularly interesting to me because, like I said, he's intelligent and he strategizes, and the way that his strategies are written are super interesting. And
I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that. I didn't know it was that serious a show.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hyping it up because it's one of my favorite shows. I mean, I'd love to watch it.
It's not actually this good. It's just...
No, I'm not saying that. Like, I love it, but
I thought it was just a random anime on Adult Swim that I didn't think I'd be able to get into.
Yeah, exactly.
or Toonami or whatever they had it on. I don't know.
Okay, well, now moving along here to Ryan. What's the first anime you're going to bring to the table here?
Oh my. Okay, the first anime that I'm going to share with you all is the one, the only, the Death Note.
Oh, that Netflix movie?
Oh God!
No. Alright. Okay, the one of the two.
It's a good Netflix movie. Fuck you, everyone who's listening.
So you say. I mean, it doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look good. Death Note, the anime, is my first anime to bring to everyone, and I guess I'll start with the synopsis and just talk about why I like this show so much. So it's basically, even though it's very popular, you probably all know, but here I go anyway. During just another normal day, character Yagami Light, he stumbles upon kind of a black notebook that fell from the realm of the Shinigami, which are the death gods. Namely, Ryuk, the actual Shinigami who dropped it. This notebook has the ability to kill anyone whose name is written in it, as long as you're picturing their face. So those are the only two requirements. You need to know their name, and you need to know their face. So, as the new owner of the Death Note, Light, his true desires surface, he starts kind of being obsessed with this idea of cleansing the world, which is a very, I don't know if relatable is the right word, but it's historically reminiscent, ethnic cleansing. Think your Hitlers, think your Mussolinis,
or more Dexter, but yeah.
I'm going to talk about that, yeah. But I'm saying this person has the power to wipe out entire populations with literally the stroke of a pen. And as he kind of starts to do that, he starts getting better at it, and the world starts to kind of take notice of the existence of this unknown killer, which is Yagami. He starts going by Kira, and eventually this detective L comes in and starts trying to hunt Kira. And that's when the whole cat and mouse, basically the whole show is based on a cat and mouse between these two geniuses. Basically, what I like so much about this is I like animes that tell stories about intelligent people who are good at just kind of thinking things through and making difficult decisions, and Death Note is full of this on both sides, on both the Kira side and L. He's going to do this, he's going to cleanse the world of all the evil, of all the criminals, but of course the problem with that is that he's the one who's just sort of making those decisions. You might not think it's arbitrary because he's doing it based off of the deeds they've done, and you can agree that the deeds might warrant this execution, this punishment that Kira is dealing out, but the fact is that it is arbitrary. Because, I mean, he's only human, and it does raise interesting moral questions to the viewer, which kind of taps into what I just said. It kind of challenges you to stretch your beliefs. And that's where I think it does kind of relate to Dexter. While Dexter's methods are kind of a lot more gory than just writing in a notebook, the themes and the philosophical questions are the same. So it's like, the whole time you're asking, is the protagonist actually the bad guy? Which, as we know, is just called the anti-hero. They make for the best shows, in my opinion. But as a viewer, you've got to ask yourself, well, shouldn't the people just kind of let him continue? Is it really bad to kill someone if you're saving multiple lives by doing so? Is he actually saving lives by doing so? How do you quantify things like that? And kind of how far would you go to protect yourself and those you love? Really, that's all I have to say. If anyone would like to jump in and make this a conversation, that's what I have to say.
While you were rambling. Alright, no, I'm just kidding.
The show itself may not always be smart, but like I said in my Death Note Netflix movie video, is that Death Note was never a smart show, but it was about smart people. And
it was done right.
Yeah, and it did it really right. It really bathed in all that sense of following these two highly intelligent people that we can't understand because they're so fucking smart, and how they have this chess game going on. And Death Note is one of my favorite as well, but I didn't include it into my list because I'm going to be doing a video farther down the line about my favorite, so I just figured Ryan's got this one. Good job, Ryan.
Yeah.
Alright, moving along to Sean. What is the first anime that you would like to talk about?
The first anime I want to talk about is first anime I've ever really seen or gotten into, which is, of course, Yu-Gi-Oh!
Scream it.
I don't want to scream it.
Time to
But it is time to do. Alright. Well, now that that's out of the way, and it did need to get out of the way, the plot was always sort of irrelevant, but here it is anyway. You have a high school student who's extremely short. That's not relevant to the plot, but I always think it's worth mentioning. And he's really good at this card game. And this kid just happens to have a Millennium Puzzle, or I forget if it was passed down to him or whatever, but he has this pyramid necklace, and it's an ancient Egyptian artifact, and from within that Egyptian artifact is the soul or the spirit of a pharaoh who's really good at games as well, coincidentally, and he has like this gambling side. He does. Yugi wants to play cards, and then this Yami Yugi Yami Yugi will come up, and he'll turn an average card game, and he's like, nah, fuck that, we gotta go to the Shadow Realm, and we gotta bet our lives.
That plays for keeps.
Yeah, that's basically this guy, and for whatever reason, Yami Yugi comes out, and he looks exactly like Yugi, but he's an appropriate height. So, what the actual show goes into is it's like a tournament-style card game. And this is my favorite thing in the entire show. There's a lot of episodes, and it goes on multiple seasons, but my favorite scene in the show is when Yugi's versing Kaiba on the Great Wall of Pegasus' house. And Kaiba takes this so fucking seriously that he stands up on the wall, and he's like, oh, if you do that last move and you beat me, the vibrations from these machines are going to shake me, and I might fall off the wall. So he's like making it's like, it's so stupid, and even as a kid I'm like, this show is so dumb, but I love it so much.
That sums that show up, man. That show is just like, there's so much wrong with it, but damn if I don't love that show, man.
Like, it doesn't make
we all grew up
sense.
just like loving that show.
Yeah, like I could try and give you like a serious synopsis, but I wouldn't be able to keep a straight face.
Your grandpa's gonna die? I know how we can settle this. A children's card game.
Yeah, and his grandpa for some reason is even shorter than Yugi, and it's like, where are these kids' parents, and why are they all at Pegasus' house?
Dude, Weevil is such a little piece of shit. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, fuck
what
Weevil.
a little fucker, dude. It's like, oh, can I see your rare cards? They're off the boat! Just fucking throws them off the boat into the ocean for no reason other than
it's like when Mac eats the contract. It's like, alright, well, that's not legitimate.
Yeah, but later Yugi...
That does not void anything.
Yugi versus Weevil and beats him, or maybe it was Jack.
Yeah, Weevil sucks!
Yeah, he's not good at the game, and then...
He's not good, he just wanted to get rid of Exodia because he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, but they never touch on how expensive those cards are. Like, beating him and taking his star chips, fuck that. Alright, I want this kid dead.
Yeah. And even with the enormous sentimental value it held for Yugi, he took it pretty well. He's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he was like, we'll settle this on the battlefield, and it's like, it's not a battlefield.
If that was me, like, the next 5 scenes would have been just me in my fucking room on the boat, just like, fuming.
No, like, it would have been me in the ocean, just looking for him.
The best, like, one of the funniest things I always found about the show is that of the way they make the games so serious, when in reality it's not really any different than going into like Game Shop, just a bunch of guys, just a bunch of fat kids like nerds playing Yu-Gi-Oh in the room. And it's like, that's what I wanted to be. I aspired to be that fat kid in the room playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And winning tournaments because I watched Yu-Gi-Oh! On TV, and I thought I could do it.
And the game. You actually played the game. We played it in, like, 5th grade tournaments.
No one played those games.
Oh, yeah, we played it. I won the tournament.
It was more fun than Magic.
Mrs. Krause, 5th grade, baby. I won the tournament. I got
no one played the game.
Like $5.
They just fucking made up rules. Just like we did with Pokemon rules.
No, the rules are too easy.
The rules are pretty easy in Yu-Gi-Oh!
Well, they used to be simple. They used to be...
Nobody played the game in Pokemon.
Pokemon's so complicated.
No, but it wasn't... Pokemon was more about collecting them. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was totally about playing.
They made Yu-Gi-Oh! More complicated as the years went on. But in the beginning, if you had a card, you could play it.
I was really good at Yu Yu Hakusho card game, too. I used to go to tournaments at card shops and win.
Grand. Okay.
Oh, one more thing. Kaiba had a brother or a sister or whatever, and that kid got
Oh,
kidnapped like 12 times.
It's a brother.
You made a
So I
I think Yu-Gi-Oh was a mistake only because we can talk about this for fucking hours.
Yeah. All right. I just wanted to talk about why I loved it so much.
Well, now that I've zoned out for the past 12 minutes.
It was not 12 minutes.
That wasn't. Moving along to my second anime.
Boo.
Is it Yu-Gi-Oh! GX or
Yu-Gi-Oh!
whatever the fucking next one was?
Duel Monsters.
I hate you all.
Dungeon Dice Monsters.
That was fun.
Alright, go ahead, Miller.
You done? Yeah, good. Alright,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Grand. Wonderful. Second anime I'm going to talk about is Wolf's Rain. And Wolf's Rain is notable because it's a Shinichiro Watanabe show that doesn't have Shinichiro Watanabe in it. Because it's all of his crew working on it, but he's just not the director, because he usually is the director of these great shows like Cowboy Bebop, like Samurai Champloo, like a show I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And he is one of the most respected names in the industry. But Wolf's Rain was taken up by one of the main writers of Cowboy Bebop called Keiko Nobumoto. And she just took over the show, and it was absolutely fantastic. She hired Yoko Kanno, who is one of the premier composers, frankly, probably one of the best composers in the world when it comes to any sort of genre you want. And then guys like Tensai Okamura, who do a lot of storyboarding for Studio Bones shows, which was also another Studio Bones show, and Studio Bones was really, around this time, very prolific. And then the guy that all of you, at least, should fairly recognize was an animator on Wolf's Rain. His name is Yoshimi Itazu. If you remember, that's the guy who directs Welcome to the Ballroom, which we watched a few episodes ago. So, a lot of really prolific names behind this. And Wolf's Rain, it's kind of tough to summarize what it's about, because it's this incredibly melancholy show about the world ending. And it follows there are these 4 boys who are wolves by their true nature. But in this world, wolves are seen as sort of devious and kind of signifiers of the apocalypse. But they've also, because this world has gotten away from its religious roots so much, is that most of the people don't consider any of that shit anymore. But these wolves are coming around, there's 4 of them, trying to find the afterlife. And this show could have so easily been very cheesy and played up, because it's every single one of the wolves they're human forms, because they can transform into humans. They're like anime pretty boys in like such a typical 90s fashion, and it really could have just been come across as so cheesy, but it earns every ounce of the melancholy, because these are just great writers, great storyboarders, great music behind every single second of the show, despite the fact that it's not an easy watch, because it handles a lot of heavy themes. It handles things like faith in both the religious and just a general sense, and the belief in the afterlife, and characters who have heavy past weighing upon their shoulders, which isn't surprising, because that's what Watanabe shows are known for. A lot of these people obviously with them take a lot of the influence upon Wolf's Rain. The show just it kind of has this weird vibe where things are going horribly wrong for everyone, and you're not happy for them, but you're not entirely sad by the fact that their world is ending, because you get a solid sense that they're willing the end of the world into their plot. This is what they want, because it's what needs to happen for the good of everyone. It really passionately questions the idea of like destiny and the purpose of it, and that if the struggle for lofty dreams are truly worth like the pain of it, but then completely
sounds like a very nihilist show.
It is, and it is like it has nihilist themes, but it's also one of the most hopeful things I've ever watched. It's really weird like that.
That is weird,
because it also just so
it's more like we're all gonna die. Like this is okay, but this is what needs to happen. And this is a good thing. Everything doesn't matter, but everything matters.
Yes.
very much at the same time.
Yeah, like, there's an episode of where the main character ends up kind of finding his way into this false heaven. And that episode really deals with the ideas of, is heaven even worth it? Because what is paradise if it just strips away everything that is human about us? Because part of being human is suffering to some extent. The highs of living aren't worthwhile unless you get those lows. So, like, to have a good concept of all these things is really the idea of a heaven. And, like, when this character goes to this fake sort of heaven, he ends up leaving it because, like, fuck this. Like, this girl character that he'd been chasing after throughout most of the show is there, and it's just him and her. And, like, you would think, oh, like, it's just him and the woman that he loves. And then this, like, blissful world, but it's actually not blissful because
there's no love anymore.
Yeah, like, when things are always great, you don't get an appreciation for them.
Not just that, but I get what you're saying about, like, the theme of it. Like if in heaven you are a transcendent being, like you are absolutely not human anymore. You are just in a perpetual state. Your consciousness transcends and becomes peace itself. Boring. Just turn the lights out.
Yeah.
You know, I get it. I'm of the same mind. I don't see what's so appealing about just being at peace, but not even really having
may as well be
the consciousness. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You might as well just be dreaming. It's like the infinite Tsukiyomi, if you will.
Okay, another Naruto.
No, you're absolutely right with that comparison. It is about the idea of, like, or like something like the Matrix, where everyone in the Matrix who is still attached to that machine is having this perfect world worked out for them. Or something like Psychopaths, where Psychopaths is about a show that has this world figured out for all of its citizens, and you will live your perfect, most idealized life. But then the question of the show is this really what life is about? And that's kind of what Wolf's Reigns is asking. If we get into paradise, will it actually be paradise?
Miller, am I correct in that this anime is a fairly short one?
It's like 20... I mean, there are some recap episodes. It has some production issues. So I want to say it's like 24 solid plot episodes.
I have a friend has all these on DVD. I guess there's a few discs or whatever, but it was like one of his favorites in high school. And now that you're explaining, like, the dynamics and, like, the themes and stuff, it sounds like it may have even been, like, too ahead of his knowledge and his understanding. Like, he said he liked it a lot, but now, like, you're explaining some very adult and very deep and very, like, existential themes. I feel like it's something you can't really appreciate unless you're looking to watch the show for those reasons. If you're just looking for pure, like, entertainment, it doesn't seem like your show, but if you're looking for something deep and meaningful in an anime, it sounds like that might be the one to go to.
Alright. Well, now moving along to our next anime, Ryan. What would you like to bring to the table?
My next anime is Steins Gate. Now, Steins Gate. To-do indeed. Thank you, Sean. Steins Gate is a story about time travel and the consequences. Just a quick synopsis again. It's about time travel and the consequences of its misuse. So, I don't know why. I know it's popular, but I feel like it's not the kind of show. I don't think it's got as many people who have seen it as, like, Death Note, for example.
It hasn't transcended that barrier, but you're right in saying that it is. Once you get into anime, it's one of those things that comes up constantly in suggestions like, oh, watch this, it's great.
Right, okay. So, the protagonist is Okabe Rintaro, who just kind of goes by Okarin, or at least one of his best friends, /something more, question mark, calls him Okarin. He's a self-proclaimed mad scientist who goes by the name of, thank you for spoiler, Miller, Hoin Kilma-sama, presumably. He is about to attend a lecture from a man proclaiming to have discovered the secrets of time travel. And Okarin challenges this theorem by claiming that this man, John Titor, I don't know, they pronounce it.
No, you're right.
Yeah, has beaten him to it. So basically it just kind of starts off with him calling out, oh, you're saying that, this person's saying that time travel is legitimate. And he's saying that, I see what you're saying, but it's already been done. All of your work is just replicated from this Sean Tyler character, who's really just prolific online. And no, he's kind of this mysterious figure who just spends time online answering people's questions about time travel. And it's, half the world thinks it's bullshit, half the scientific world, and half the world thinks there might be something to it. He obviously thinks there's something to it. He meets the other main character, or another one of the main characters, just kind of in the same day, during the same lecture, Makase.
So what's your favorite part?
I guess I can wrap up the synopsis. Basically, they just, they end up creating this microwave on accident that will send text messages back to the past if they just hook up their cell phone to it. So ultimately, they kind of, the way they figure this out on accident is that after Okunin finds Kurisu lying dead in a closet in the same lecture hall, in the same building, he kind of panics and texts his friend, who texts something back to him, which will inadvertently send him back in time and able to prevent the death of this girl. After a while, they kind of work out the kinks and find out all of the rules to this time traveling thing, and he starts kind of interfering in the past, especially when it turns out that in the timeline that they just naturally are in, one of his very close friends is supposed to die young, so that starts throwing him into a time loop. And I guess that's kind of what one of the main things I want to talk about and why I like this show. You might want to try to call this a classic time traveler story, but it doesn't have all the problems that you might expect from time-traveling shows and movies. And that is the problem with the loop. There's lots of plot holes, there's just ways around the way that the show would permit it. But the Steins Gate, the plots, and the way that they've worked out the rules, it's solid, the plot is airtight, and it's genuinely exciting, yeah. The problem with loop stories generally is that the loop itself, when they're doing that part of the show or movie, it can be boring through its own repetitiveness, but Steins Gate doesn't fall into this trap at all. That's what I mostly appreciate about the show, is that, to me, it was time traveling done right. In kind of every sense of the world. It also has a very satisfying ending. However, one could say that it's sort of undercut by the very ending. He ends up having to make this incredibly tough decision, where he's literally choosing who lives and who dies, and he makes that choice, and things kind of fade away, and some time passes, and he's kind of made peace with this. This is the very end, and I'm leaving out the details, obviously, but I think, personally, I would have appreciated if it kind of left it as it was, but it does in fact turn out that there's a happy ending overall. Which, great, nice, and all of that, but it takes away just a little bit from the emotional value of the bittersweet ending that it could have had.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but overall, obviously it's here on my list. One of my favorite, if not my all-time favorite anime. And Miller here is actually who got me into it. So it took me a while to actually sit down and watch it. And even still, after watching the first and second episode, I was confused, and I wasn't hooked yet, but you grab a hold of this a couple episodes in, and it's something that you will not regret giving a chance.
Yeah, I have a quick story about that, because Miller also got me into the show, and I was deployed at the time, and I would be at a post where I would have nothing to do for 12 hours, essentially. So I'm like, Miller, what's a good anime to watch? I want to download all the episodes and then bring it to work with me so I have something to do. And he's like, watch Steins Gate. And I said, fuck it, fine. I asked, you answered. I'll do that. So I started watching these episodes, and I'm like, I remember being so fucking bored. I'm like, when does this show become a show? I remember texting Miller. I'm like, when does it get good? Like, why is this show good? And he's like, just give it a few episodes. So I watched the next couple episodes, and then it just hit me. I was like, okay. Now, about halfway through, maybe a little bit before that, like, that's why this show is good. And by the time I was done, I said, that's why this show is a masterpiece. I get it.
Yeah, and I should add, there are antagonists in this show. There's like this group called CERN, and they're trying to get him. Yeah. And at first you think it's just part of his sort of delusion, because he kind of has these schizophrenic tendencies. but it becomes very clear that in a very literal sense, people are after them, and that kind of plays out.
Yeah. You talked about how this show feels like time travel done right. I think one of the reasons for this is because, I mean, I've also played the visual novel, which was the original work that inspired the anime. But even from the anime, if you look into things, a lot of it is based off of real science behind it and real sort of theories and a lot of that sort of shit. Like, John Titor is an actual human being that appeared on the internet around the time of Y2K and was posting on the internet that about all like the Y2K theories, and he was getting like he's saying, "Oh, I'm this guy from the future. Here's what's going to happen." And some of the shit he was saying ended up being true, just because he was probably a smart person who kind of was able to predict how things would go. And then CERN is
like 9/11.
Yeah, in some capacity, like a vacant capacity, yeah. And then CERN in the real world is SERN. It's that underground.
Large Hadron Collider.
That's
Large
them.
Hadron Collider in Sweden or wherever it is.
In Sweden. That is them. And CERN in the show is spelled with a C instead of an S. I think a lot of the people who are working there are working with sciences that they don't fully understand to the point where they had a theory like they're going to smash two either neutrons or atoms into each other. Yeah, at a very high speed using the machinery they have down there, and they were like, world might end, but we don't know. But you're right in saying there's a lot of good science behind this because...
Oh, yeah. I understood the science. I mean, you need a collider. They literally, I don't know, they put two atoms in there. I don't know. They filter out every atom except for two atoms, and because they so naturally and violently avoid each other when en route, it has to go super high speed. So when they collide, it almost creates for just a split second like a mini black hole, which is said to be able to contain, or to trap time, rather. So it's very mysterious how that would be able to work in the context of time travel. But the science is legitimate.
And the show has a smart way of getting to how these characters time travel. It's not just like, oh, we made a time machine. That's not how technology evolves. It's usually through mistakes. Like, the mistake was them making a microwave that was supposed to have a totally other purpose. And they ended up finding out, shit, we're sending things back in time.
The main character has lots of seemingly useless inventions that turn out to be useless throughout the show.
Yeah, and then this one was a mistake that just went kind of right, but then horrifically wrong. But yeah, Steins Gate is a great show. It doesn't capture all the things I love about the visual novel, because the visual novel has the advantage of exploring the what-ifs. The show doesn't, because the show has to follow the true timeline, as you were saying, about the happy ending. And the visual novel has a lot of really fucked up, horrific shit that goes on in it. But yeah, it's a good one.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Moving along to Sean. What's your next anime?
What is my next anime? My next anime is Avatar, The Last Airbender, and fuck you.
What? That's not an anime.
No, you stop that. You're a naysayer, and I don't like naysayers.
Talking about that Nickelodeon show, boy?
It is a Nickelodeon show. It's a Nickelodeon anime, if you will, and you will. So I will explain to you with my mouth and my words.
Talk about that awesome movie made by M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh, that's what I've seen. I was wondering what you were talking about. Yeah.
Oh my god.
That is a good movie, yeah.
No, it's not.
What about that movie that you like the most?
He's probably the best director who's ever lived, and that was probably his best movie. So therefore,
that's why I didn't have to go back to film school. Me and Billy saw this movie together, and we were with we saw it with two girls, and they both fell asleep immediately, and we both wanted to leave, but we didn't want to wake them up. So we're like, "Fuck it, we'll just watch the movie." It was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. But the show, I think the show is the best thing that Nickelodeon has ever done and could probably ever do. I think. Well, Korra, Avatar, Last Airbender, and Legend of Korra. I'm just talking about the overall, like the whole show. Because to me, it's like one show with two. Korra's like Shippuden, basically.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So, what I love about the show is just the characters. The story is kind of secondary. Like, it's a cool story, but it's not the most original. what I love about the show is the characters. I like Aang. I like him as a main character. I think it's an interesting way to make a main character with so much power never want to kill anybody.
It's classic blank slate.
It is a blank slate because
I feel like he's not that much in blank slate. I feel like he's a lot of Naruto.
Well, I mean, he's good. He's intrinsically good.
Yeah,
and there's no question
he's
about
classic, just hero's journey. If you want to go into that whole theory,
right. But the twist with Aang is that he has a whole lot of guilt because his entire culture was murdered. They were all slaughtered in their homes. And he ran away when he was supposed to help. And he was frozen he protected himself by freezing himself, and he was frozen for 100 years. Until this hilarious, awesome guy and his dumb fucking sister found him in an iceberg. And then that's how they start their whole quest.
Whoa, well, dumb sister.
Katara bothers me. My favorite show, the real reason this is the best anime ever is solely because of Sokka, and that's it. Sokka's the best. He should have been the Avatar. He should be in charge of everything all the time. I don't see how anybody could have a favorite character that's not Sokka or Azula.
I like the giant flying bison.
Appa's fine. He's a vehicle less than a character.
Take that back.
He has personality. I do like Sokka and his space sword, though. And how he undergoes weeks long training to become a master swordsman.
Yeah, and he comes out a master swordsman. And you know what? He's always been a master boomerangsman because that's just in his blood. But my favorite thing in The Last Airbender is the failure. The best thing about that show is they spend 2 seasons the attack on the Fire Nation. So they plan this attack and they're like, okay, we have this plan. It's foolproof. They're going to lose all their power for however many minutes, and that's when they're going to topple the Fire Nation. And the best part to me is that failed horribly, and they had to come up with a completely different plan, and they had to roll with the punches, and they had to make new allies, and it ended up working out in the end. But that failure made Aang even more interesting because he kind of gave up again. And he was sort of like, what's the point of doing any of this? I'm going to go fight the Fire Lord right now and probably die because I'm sick of this. He was basically
that
giving up
depression
again.
That depression is replicated tenfold in Korra.
Yeah, but
because she also kind of suffers a serious injury, and just like Aang, but to a greater degree, she is trying to just snatch herself back from the almost suicidal thoughts. She just feels like her entire life is useless, and that it'd be better to let the next Avatar be born.
Well, that's what I was leading into, is that for the same reason I like The Last Airbender, and my favorite part of that series, why I like The Legend of Korra so much is that PTSD. I like how she takes everything very seriously, like a real person would. She has all this power, but when she loses, she takes it very personally. She gets beaten.
She's also older.
Well, being older helps a lot. I didn't like the supporting cast as much. I didn't give a fuck about Mako or Mako. I didn't give a fuck about
Mako.
Yeah, I didn't give a fuck about the girl. I thought Bolin was hilarious. He could stick around. And her polar bear. Not enough appearances by that polar. That polar bear was useless the whole show. No, it definitely wasn't an Appa. My favorite character in Korra was actually Tenzin, because he had a lot to deal with. He had a lot on his plate.
It was interesting how Aang turned out to be a kind of a father, a distracted father, a sort of subpar in his duties at home.
Yeah, he wasn't really perfect at anything in his entire
wasn't perfect
life.
at anything at all.
Yeah, and that translates over to...
Still, though, he built a city. He was somewhat of a conqueror. I mean, he defeated the reigning empire.
I wouldn't say he was a conqueror. I'd say
sure he was. And then a city was in its place in his... I don't know if it was in his... I don't remember if it was in his name, but with statues to him.
He didn't conquer anything. He restored balance.
He wasn't doing it because he was of any land hunger, but he conquered in the name of justice and in the name of what's right.
I wouldn't say he's a conqueror. They kind of had an army. I still don't think he's a conqueror. I think they were just trying to restore balance. That's the whole thing.
He was a non-conqueror who conquered the conqueror.
Oh, God. He was a monk. You can't be a conqueror and a monk.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But yeah, that's my favorite thing on Nickelodeon. It's one of my favorite shows. Top 3.
Yeah, I don't know why that's funny, but it is.
My favorite thing on Nickelodeon. Right next to Sam and Cat.
Oh,
Oh, man.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
It's an anime, so fuck everybody else.
yeah, it is.
It's good.
All right, Billy, your second anime that you'd like to talk about.
My second anime is Sagwa. No, I'm just kidding. No, the second, yeah, the Japanese Siamese cat.
Yeah.
No, my second anime is Rurouni Kenshin, also known as Samurai X. He goes by a bunch of different names in the show. He's basically a samurai who is known for being extremely ruthless on the battlefield during the Great Samurai War. He was known as Samurai X. He was known as the Batosai. He was known as the Shadow of Assassins or something or the Assassin of Shadows or something like that. He's known as a bunch of different names. He's basically a legend, but he is real. A lot of people don't think he was real. But he basically killed thousands. He was the most proficient with a blade on the battlefield. He had a bloodlust. He was insatiable in his bloodlust, and he killed countless people. And that all happened in the past, and the show picks up basically where this guy, who was that guy that I just described, Himura Kenshin, is now wandering through Japan seeking redemption for his actions because he feels absolutely terrible. He was basically taken over by this... it's not an actual entity. It's a metaphor, of course. Like this was his own doing. Whatever he has in the psyche caused him to do this. It wasn't like he was possessed, but it's almost like he was possessed because now he's a completely different person, and he has made a vow to himself to never kill again. Now he wants to wander through Japan, and he wants to seek redemption. He wants to help people and save people to try to make up for each life that he took. He wants to save a life, which seems like a very daunting task. It'll never happen. He'll never save enough people to make up for his sins, but he's nonetheless trying. And now he lives his life trying to seek redemption. Like I said, he refuses to kill again. He has a sword that's like a double-edged,
Reverse.
It's a reverse blade sword. When he pulls his sword out, there's no actual sharp edge on it. It's just like a piece. It's like a metal. So when he fights people, because he still does have to fight from time to time. I mean, he realizes that there's never going to be not violence in the world, but he refuses to kill. He just knocks people out and deems them or knocks them unconscious or whatever. So he comes across this girl who is fighting for her life against this giant man that is claiming to be the Batosai of legend, and he comes across it and he's like, "Fuck you! You're not the Batosai. I'm the Batosai." And he basically takes out 20 guys with this reverse blade sword and knocks them all out. And then the girl offers him a place to stay, and that's where the show picks up. It's just him living with this extremely nice family, and realizing that a lot's gone on in the world since this war, and there's sort of a power vacuum, and this guy named Shishio is trying to basically destroy Japan and restore balance to this evil presence that once ruled it. And it's just such a good show because of the characters and the fight sequences. If I could pick two things that I like that are the reasons I like the show, it's because of the relationships between the characters and the dynamics of their emotions and stuff, and then the fight sequences themselves. The actual animation of the fights are just incredible. But Kenshin is just this extremely kind soul. If you came across him, you would not believe that he murdered thousands of people just 10 years back. You'd believe he's just the kindest, most soft-spoken person, and even in his voice actor, they've even done a good job portraying that he's just this soft-spoken, kind, gentle bear that will never touch anybody. But then you can see a switch flip in his eye where he sometimes some of that Samurai X Batosai shit comes out in him when somebody hurts somebody he loves. He just snaps almost and just fucking tears people up, and he's just by far the best fighter in the nation, except for maybe a few people he comes across. And the fight sequences just portray that so well. He's insanely fast. All the people he fights, the animation is just really good. There's a tournament arc towards the end of the first season that's just incredible.
You're really flattering this guy, Billy.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
just go ahead and marry
he's
him.
got really beautiful red
Flattering is not
hair,
the F word I
really
was
nice,
thinking of.
really nice skin. There's a scene in like episode
Blow him
2
already.
where
Yes.
they go from. It's a panning shot from his feet up to his head, and it stops like at his groin for a few seconds, and it's just the best scene ever.
Were you also in that shot?
Yeah, I was in the background.
He was on
admiring.
his knees. You couldn't see him. He was on his knees at the time. The camera's a liar.
But yeah, I'll stop filleting this fictional character, and I'll basically just say like that the elements of his sorrow run so deep that you can feel it. It's like tangible when you watch the show. Like you can understand that he'll never redeem himself. Like he's done terrible, terrible things. Like he slaughtered kids, he slaughtered families. Like he did terrible things, and yet he still tries. He realizes that there's no way you can go back in time and fix these issues, but he can do what he can do with the rest of his life to at least try and die with some peace of mind. And that's basically the entire show. And it's good. And there's a movie too. They came out with a movie. It's like a 2-hour-long movie called Samurai X that portrays the past. Like it portrays him as the actual Batosai, like legend killer. And it's a fucking badass movie.
Yeah, the
super
OVA.
badass.
Is really,
Alright, keep your pants on.
I've also seen. I've not finished it, sadly. I stopped at like the Kyoto arc, like right as that was beginning,
Okay.
which I know a lot of people love. But you're right in saying that there's a lot of great characters, especially the villains. Like
Oh yeah,
The Wolf.
Saito and Shishio. Yeah, they're not villains. That's why they're such good villains. They're all pretty much anti-heroes, except for maybe the exception of one person.
so like the guy who's amongst the police force of Japan, who's now like in the past was like kind of an arch rival of Kenshin.
Yeah, he's
He's
the
a
only
great character.
person that ever survived against
Yeah.
the Batosai in battle. Yeah, that's Saito.
Yeah, Saito, and now like he's like in that arc, he has to start working with him, and like you can tell he's a cop, but he's kind of a vicious little cunt.
No, that show has so much nostalgia with me too. It's like one of the shows that just like blew my socks off in terms of like, holy shit, this guy's a badass. That's why it sounded like I was like blowing him a little bit there.
Wasn't the only thing getting blown?
Because when I was younger and I was watching this show,
Well, so now
It was like
Kenshin's a pedophile.
well, it was around the age that like I wasn't really supposed to be watching like super violent stuff. My mom was pretty strict on me when I was younger.
But you were masturbating.
God damn it! Yes, I was masturbating, but that's besides the point. But my point is, I'd stay up late and I'd watch this shit, and I'd be like, "Oh my god! Like, my mom better not walk in the room right now. A, I'm watching this really violent stuff, and B, my pants are down."
Okay.
But give it a watch,
True.
guys. I'm
Too
telling
true.
you.
I did start
Good
it,
show.
but I didn't know anything about it,
Alright.
and I kind of dropped it after like the first episode. But
It starts off slow. If you don't know anything about it and you watch the first few episodes and you're not really feeling the vibe, I could see why you drop it. But if you give it some more time and you're more open-minded to it, it'll grow on you.
There's like one of the first major arcs for like I forget the villain's name, but like he wears that giant ass trench coat and has all of his very devoted followers.
Water.
No. God damn it. That's a ridiculous reference. Nobody would ever even get that.
But yeah, that arc is where I think it really takes off. And it's like maybe 10
for
episodes.
Sure.
So
And the Sword Collector is right around that time. That guy's pretty cool.
So, Sean, time for you to talk about your last anime.
Okay. My last anime, it might actually be my favorite anime, and it's one I watched pretty recently. This in the same deployment that I watched Steins, I watched this, and it's Your Lie in April. I brought it up, and what it's really about is a young boy named Kosei Arima, and he's a musician, and he was taught by his mother to be extremely meticulous. They called him the human metronome because he did exactly what was written on the paper 100% of the time. And he was a prodigy. And his mom was very ill, and she was very focused on giving him this skill, if only to make sure that he always has a way to earn money and feed himself and look after himself. And in doing that, she became a very rigid woman, and she was very hard to love, or hard to like, I guess I should say. and she died. And Kosei ended up having sort of a mental breakdown in one of his performances when he was 11. And since then, he can't hear the sound of his own piano. His hearing's fine, but like it's sort of like it's like trauma induced. He can't hear his piano when he's playing. So the whole show revolves around him meeting this girl named Kaori, and this girl he sort of instantly falls in love with. And this girl is a violinist. She's sort of a crazy girl. She's sort of all over the place. She doesn't really have a whole lot of
eccentric.
restraint. Yeah, she's
like
eccentric.
Musicians are.
Yeah, well, that personality resonated with Kosei in a way that, combined with his love for her, sort of brought him back from the brink, and he started playing music for the first time since his mom died, since that mental breakdown. And the reason I love the show so much is because most, if not every episode, that it hits hard. They're telling a story, and they are very intent on telling it right and through not just dialogue, which is, I think, expertly handled, but through music, which is the highlight of the show.
Phenomenally handled.
Yes. See, the music, there will be episodes where it's mostly Kosei or somebody in the cast playing music with some light dialogue in the back, but you're listening to the song, and that's kind of the main point of the scene. And they do it so well, they're able to sort of speak through their music, and I think that if you're able to do that, that you deserve to be at the top of my list, and at the top of anybody's list.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought. Well, I was just going to say that when I was kind of watching it, and I did watch it too, I loved it as well. I kind of got the feeling that it was similar to Shokugeki no Soma Food Wars, which we've had an episode about. Check it out. Just in that, when you enjoy the fruits of the talent, the fruits of the labor of these main characters, sometimes literally fruits in Food Wars, the viewers themselves, as well as the people in the audience, or the people who are tasting the dish, a scene is depicted, a very vivid scene. There's one scene in particular in Your Lie in April, where Kosei is playing he's just playing a piece, and someone comes up to him after, a friend of his, and they actually tell him that they saw what he was feeling in his heart. They saw the broken shallow breathing of someone sleeping in the corner of a room. They smelled the dust of the music room where he practiced the song, and they could see the petals of the cherry blossoms floating in through a window. Like they were everyone who was listening to that song, they were there. It was amazing to see, it was amazing to have Kosei just be able to do this and to hear that he had done it. He starts becoming more aware, I wouldn't say of his talent, but he starts becoming more aware of his goal, which he never even knew he had, and that is to become a pianist like Kaori is a violinist, one who is eccentric, one who makes the audience feel something that they did not even see coming. And what makes this show special, even well above Food Wars, I would say, obviously, because that's tasting, is that as the viewer, I felt like if I could close my eyes while listening to the piece, I would also smell the dust. I would also see the cherry blossoms. They do an excellent job of making the viewer feel what the audience in the show is feeling.
Exactly. Yes, and that's one of the main points of the show that you can't gloss over. A lot of the characters even will actually come out and say it, and the whole show is in regards to music. Will it reach them? Or can my music say what I want to be said? Will it reach them?
That's what I mean
when
I say he's becoming more aware of that. Yeah. That becomes his goal.
And it's just amazing when they succeed, and they always succeed, and that's why every episode is a great episode. You can't really get enough of that.
You're gonna cry if you watch this show.
It is. I suggested it to Sean originally because I figured he would like it. Also because of the fact that he plays piano. To summarize what I love about it, if you just go on to YouTube and look up Your Lie in April OST. Like, the third was all down. It's called Shigatsu wa Kimi no Uso. Beautiful soundtrack. And it's one of the original pieces for the show. Just play that, and you'll know exactly what the show's all about, because it's an amazing piece. I'll have it playing in the background of as we're talking about it. I plan on putting all musical pieces to...
What's it called?
Shigatsu wa Kimi no Uso.
Oh, okay, I see it. 4 minutes, 50 seconds long?
Yeah, of course.
It's a very picturesque drawing of the four main characters, the four kids that are kind of laying in grass. And it's a great show. I mean, you all were talking about how, like, about Kosei kind of figuring out how to express himself as a creative voice, despite going through some traumatizing ass shit. And while I'm not going through the same level of shit that he has, like, as someone who's also creative and likes to express myself, like, Your Lie in April really vibes with me, and it is a fantastic show.
Yeah. The one issue I had at any point in the entire show is that, like, they could have just had his dad be dead the whole time. Apparently he was alive at work. Like, you never see him. He never comes up. Oh, how's your dad? I don't fucking know. Like, I don't even know where he is. Like, a year goes by.
He could be home in a month or two.
This show takes place over the course of a year, and the dad is just never brought up. He's brought up in the very beginning. Oh, he's away on a business trip, and that's it.
Very anime thing.
Someone else even becomes his legal guardian.
Essentially.
I mean, yeah, because his dad's never fucking around.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, no, that's pretty funny, but yeah, one of my favorite anime as well.
Alright, moving along here. Now to my final anime that I'm going to be talking about, and that is something called Kids on the Slope. Now, Kids on the Slope is from Shinichiro Watanabe, who I already mentioned in this podcast as one of the prolific anime directors, just talents in this industry. And this is his only work from after Cowboy Bebop, when he first rose to fame, that is a non-original work, because he always does things that he cooks up on his own. And this was an adaptation of a manga, which seemed weird at the time for him, because Kids on the Slope is all about those years of your last, like, junior year to senior year of high school, and then kind of reflecting upon that very transitionary period in your life. And if you know me, you know that I'm a person who wants to have the best moment of my life is to be the final seconds of my life. I want everything to be just a constant fucking upwards, just passionate, great time. Even though it doesn't always happen, even though it may not always seem that way, but that's what I want. And this show...
All I want is for everything to be great and get better forever.
Yeah.
I don't ask for much. I'm not asking for much.
But no, because what I'm drawing from here is because so often you hear people say, the best time of your life is when you're a teenager or when you're in college. And I think that's a terrible fucking way of looking at life, because if that's it, then... by the time you graduate college, you're 24, 25, yeah, you're peaking early. Like, you got so long to go. Like, life should just be...
Go to graduate school,
keep having a great time, because life is precious. I'm going to be getting a little touchy here, I guess, because the show handles a lot of very sensitive issues. It says a lot for a show to be able to make me feel remorseful about my high school year, because I generally don't give a shit. Like, not that I hated high school, I had a pretty good time. Like, I had a lot of good friends, and, like, made good friends towards the end of it. Like, I only met the three of you really towards the end of high school. Like, I think literally the day that we first all hung out was...
Scholarship night?
Even after that, because I didn't go there, but the day that we first all hung out was a party that we went into the woods behind your house, behind Ryan and Sean's house, after I had a graduation party at my grandmother's house for, like, it was like 2 or 3 days. Yeah. It was like 2 or 3 days before our final day of senior year. And for sure to make me, like, look back on that stuff and on high school and make me feel regretful about stuff and make me wish I had done things differently is saying a lot. And I think there's a few key reasons for this. The first and foremost, well, maybe not the foremost, but a major reason is that the show is heavily about these four characters it takes place during the early 70s. So during a time of youthful unrest, because just like in the U.S., where we had a lot of sort of political upheaval and people not being happy about how things were being run, from both a racial perspective, obviously the civil rights movement, but also just the counterculture perspective of how the whole ideas of like hippies during that time, and bands like the Beatles, who are often mentioned in the show, how that all like actually had a big influence in Japan as well, because Japan has always had a very tenuous sort of relationship between the youth and seniority. And the show really capitalizes on that dichotomy and that time period in Japan, and focuses on these four characters who are all passionate about music. Something that I've also, again, getting into the remorse, I hate that earlier in my life I didn't pick up music, because I feel that music is the most expressive means of art, and as I was saying about Your Lie in April, I like to express myself. And it's my way of best communicating with others. And I wish, like, I occasionally write lyrics, but I never publish it because I'm always afraid. I don't have the ability to match it. Like, I'm not a guitarist, I'm not a pianist, so I don't have the ability to match it to music. And it really eats at me that I can't do this thing. Secondly, a reason that the show really vibes with me is that, I mean, I've talked about this in my baby steps video, but it handles the idea of like a loss of friendship and kind of wishing you could fix shitty situations that you'll never be able to. Because the protagonist befriends a guy that has a sort of a rough past, and he really wants him to kind of just straighten out, and because he realizes, dude, you're an incredibly talented musician, you're a smart guy, you're a kind person, if you just get away from the shitty things in your life and focus on what you can do right, you could be so happy, you could be doing amazing things. To get into spoilers territory, like, things don't always super work out the way the protagonist wants, and it makes me think about ways that, like, I've lost two very close friends, like, from a car accident and from cancer, and wishing that, like, while they may not have gone down the paths themselves, it still reminds me that, like, I wish I could have fixed those situations, but the show really gives you an idea of what it feels like to be powerless against just everything. And it hits hard. Like, it makes me...
So why would I want to watch it?
Sounds like a really emotional...
Why would anybody want empathy?
It does a very, very good job of, like, reflecting upon these things and teaching you, in a way, like I was talking about Wolf's Rain, where, like, shitty things are going to happen, they're meant to happen, but you just need to accept them and move on and learn to be happy and accept that things are going to be the way that things are going to be. And the show does that really well. And also just, again, dive into another area, like the main character has a crush on a girl and, like, completely fucks it up. Like,
gay?
Like, completely fucks it up in, like, a not, like, direct way. Like, they don't ever date, they just kind of, like, they both know that they like each other. But then they, like, neither of them ever make a full move, and just, like, the show is just such a thing that's full of regret. Like, it's impressive that I was able to come away from it in a way that, like, could have felt very cheesy or very melodramatic. Or just
seems like it realistically portrays life.
Yeah, but
like, really shitty things happen. Like, things that are fairy tales sometimes don't pan out, and it's kind of what it seems like the way you're describing it.
Again, to go back to Wolf's Rain, like, for whatever reason, sometimes, like, super depressing things always seem kind of hopeful to me, because a lot of times I find the hopeful stuff in them and see that, like, oh, things can be fucking awful, but there's always something to reach towards. And the show does that. A lot of shit goes wrong for all these characters, but by the end of it, even if everything didn't go right, it feels like they look back on life like they don't regret the time they had together. And I think it's a good show in comparison to, like, all those other teen dramas out there, whether they be Western teen dramas or anime shit. Like, it's a good show to actually realistically take a look on that stuff and reflect, and especially for people like our age that are years away from that stuff now, but it still has an impact on our life. It's good to look at yourself in the past like that.
Yeah, reach for the sky.
For sure.
That's a Toy Story quote, 1995.
It is. It is.
I'm just making my boot.
Alright, Billy. Fire away with your last...
My turn again?
Your last anime.
Alright. I didn't even write notes for this one. I already closed my phone. I had notes up for the other ones because I had to get a little bit of a refresher, but you don't need any motherfucking notes for Dragon Ball Z!
Dragon
Oh my God.
What
is
is
Is that a show?
Oh my God, that show.
You picked the
I'm
wrong
not doing a
Dragon Ball.
synopsis. I'm not doing a fucking synopsis. And you know what? I'm gonna say Dragon Ball through Dragon Ball Soup, including the movies. Maybe we'll skip GT. How's that sound?
Skip GT. We should skip it. It's been deemed
even though it's whatever. It's kind of a meme at this point that GT is terrible. GT is terrible, but like there's definitely some points in GT where it was entertaining. Let's not pretend that the fight against Omega Shenron shit wasn't fucking cool. But
I like Vegeta's.
But just Dragon Ball in general, man. Just Goku is just like one of the most badass anime characters ever. Like, there's just so many cool things to be said about Dragon Ball Z. I don't even know where to start. The fighting, it's what I grew up on. Like, going home from school, turning on the TV, telling my mom to make me a fucking sandwich, and watching Dragon Ball Z.
You sound like a pleasant child.
No, she made me a sandwich anyway.
Goku's like a badass on accident.
You shouldn't mistreat your mom. Your mom's hot.
Right. Okay, wow. Well, let's strike that from the record. Anyways, again, it's almost like Yu-Gi-Oh! Where some of the plot points are laughable. It's almost just like, wow, okay, that's ridiculous. But who cares if it's ridiculous? It's fucking Dragon Ball Z, and I want to watch Goku save the world again. And, like I said before with the trope where it's like, Goku has to fight Frieza, and then they talk Frieza up, like King Kai's like, oh, Frieza! He's the strongest thing in the universe! And then Goku's like, really I got it. And then Goku fucking fights Frieza, and then, they're like, where do we go from here? And then they're like, oh, I forgot about Cell! Now Cell's actually 10 million times stronger than Frieza. Goku's like, 10 million? What the fuck? So Goku loses against Cell, but that's neither here nor there. His son...
Somewhere. He barely loses.
His son picks up the fucking reins and runs house on Cell. But then Cell's defeated and the world's at peace again, and then again, King Kai's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting old. I must have forgotten about Majin Buu. And then apparently Majin Buu has been around for like millions of years, and he's like the strongest thing ever. And then they defeat Majin Buu, and then like you think that's the end of it, but then he's got two forms, and then they defeat him like two more times, and the world's at peace again. And then they're like, all these Shenron things are coming out of nowhere. Like the show is just ridiculous. Like it's just exponential villain against versus exponential villain like over and over.
He got about God.
Yeah, he never.
Yeah, and then the movies take it a step even further. The movies are like, it's just so ridiculous. It's such a ridiculous trope with that show, but it's so awesome. Like
even Vegeta.
Beerus is so strong that like they didn't even like Goku couldn't even possibly even damage him. The whole point of that movie was just like Goku punched him like once, and then Beerus was like, "All right, you're pretty entertaining." And that's the end of it. But then I found out apparently the guy that's with Beerus though is like 10 million times stronger than Beerus.
He's Beerus' trainer.
Yeah,
truly shocking turn of events.
It's so ridiculous, and then I guarantee you, like at some point, Dragon Ball Z is going to be like, alright, we gotta take this a step further, and then there's gonna be a guy that's like 8 trillion times stronger than all of them combined.
In Dragon Ball Super, there's a guy, he's the Xeno King, and he could literally snap his finger and the whole universe is destroyed.
Yeah. So it's just like, we get that it's ridiculous, but
I think the show is gonna be with them coming out of the TV and beating the shit out of us.
And Goku is he's so innocent and so humble and so
stupid,
kind-hearted, yet at the same time just so like,
naive.
So yeah, exactly. Naive's the perfect word for it. But he's just so kind-hearted, and everything he's doing is to try and prove that he's strong, because that's his whole character model, is that he wants to try and prove that he's strong and look for challenges. But then B, just like he wants to see the good in people and he wants to keep fighting. There's really no point to his fighting at this point because, like Sean just said, they're at the point where there are like people in the show that Goku can't even hold a candle to, and they'll just snap their fingers and end the universe if they want to, and there's nothing Goku can do about it. But Goku still just finds a way to try to keep fighting and try to keep his competitive spirit alive and try to see the good in people. And I think that just sums up Dragon Ball Z. There's really nothing else you need to take from that show other than just entertainment and friendship and just really basic themes that don't really run very deep. You can't try to draw some giant, deep, like, intrinsic meaning out of Dragon Ball Z, but I don't think you're supposed to. I don't think that's why that show exists. That show exists just because it's, like, a very stereotypical and really fun and entertaining anime, and I'll always fucking love it.
Akira Toriyama just makes it up as he goes along. Like, he doesn't have this this broad storyboard laid
That's
out.
obvious.
With all the...
Right. I wasn't gonna write down some, like, Dragon Ball Z is actually a metaphor for this and that. Like, no, like, I'm not going there, Dragon Ball Z is what it is. It's fucking ridiculous. It's fucking entertaining, and I grew up on it, and it's incredible. And goddamn, I love it. That's it.
And the best character is Vegeta. All right, moving on.
Remember when in Dragon Ball, where Goku just like patted Bulma down, like in the badge?
I saw that.
Yeah. In Dragon Ball, yeah. And then like she shakes her butt at him, and one of them.
She also flashes what's his face, the old
Yamcha.
No, not Yamcha.
Oh, the old one? Oh, that's what's his name? Or something, the trainer, the main guy.
Master Roshi.
Master Roshi, yeah, Roshi, yeah.
Him. Yeah.
There's a guy that goes to the
by far probably.
He
like Master Roshi.
He like tells her to. It's like an ultimatum.
Ultimatum.
So what?
Despite all that,
if you show me a goods.
Despite all that, Dragon Ball's better than Dragon Ball Z because Dragon Ball Z is really fucking boring.
No, it's not.
I don't know, man.
Dragon Ball is cool.
Remember that episode of Dragon Ball Z that like was a fight that carried out for? Oh wait, that was literally the entire fucking series. It was just one goddamn dragging bullshit. Everyone's so much stronger than the last guy. It's terrible. It's a bad show. Fuck.
Yeah, there are.
I'm striking this from the record.
Elements to the show.
Think of another show.
No, you're not.
I like it.
I like it too.
It's garbage.
I'm waiting. No,
listen, I understand that there are better written shows, and I understand that there are better written characters, but the point of this podcast was, what are your favorite animes? And I fucking grew up watching Dragon Ball Z. It's one of my favorite. And like,
unfortunate.
it's just good for what it is. You don't have to look for deep.
No, you don't have to always look for deep
meaning and value in things, but it's entertaining.
No, it's a good show that doesn't always have deep meaning. Kill the kill. It's a bunch of fucking people bashing the shit out of each other until they're naked. And it's fucking wonderful.
I'm sorry, did you get 4 anime to talk about? I don't remember.
I'll talk about however the fuck I want. Now go to your last anime, you fucking asshole. Talk about Naruto.
Oh, is it my turn? Hey! It's a secret! I have this whole thing planned. I'm doing it anyway.
You spoiled it.
So what is it? Boruto.
Hope not.
Alright, guys. That's my big surprise. The anime that I have chosen is... It's Naruto. And here's what I want to say about it.
I hope you know I'm going to drown out the music you were playing in the background.
No, don't. It won't.
It adds to it.
Okay. Now, it is, to be specific, fuck you, I love Naruto. Now, you probably haven't heard of it, so I'm just going to kind of break it down for you. Okay. Basically, it's in Naruto, he has the nine-tailed fox spirit inside of him. The spirit killed his parents and attacked his village, and it's under mysterious circumstances. And... fuck it. The reason I like this show so much, I'm just going to assume you all know. Honestly, I think probably what I like most is the villains, or the antagonist, at least. Some of them even anti-heroes. My favorite character is
Itachi.
Well, I'm going to say my favorite antagonist is Itachi. I have a favorite character, but admittedly he's not as good as Itachi. But Itachi, he just deserves a special mention all by himself. He's sad, and he's elegant in his sorrow. His entire background story is extremely tragic. He just kind of chooses to sacrifice everything: his name, his family, and his village, or excuse me, his name, his family, and his brother's love for his village. And almost the entire series is kind of based around the incident that Itachi was responsible for. He made the plot. And on top of that, he can take anyone just like one-on-one. Like, almost anyone in the show, Itachi is stronger than. He's debatably the strongest character in the show, and kind of in the history of the show. I mean, Naruto and Sasuke kind of become like godlike by the end, so I guess if you wanted to scratch out their final forms, you could. But basically, no one is stronger than fucking Itachi. He can take on the entire Uchiha clan one on all, so just take that into consideration.
Well, he's not.
Unlike some other anime. What?
Itachi.
Problem.
Jiraiya, or I guess Itachi said that if he was to fight Jiraiya, it would be like a tie.
Whatever.
Yeah, okay. Sure, fine. Jiraiya, the legendary
that was in part. That was when everyone was 12 years old.
He would be unable to defeat Itachi. Just kind of adds to my point. Thank you, Sean. Unlike some other anime, like One Piece and Dragon Ball Z, where the fight scenes are like kind of slow-paced, sort of mindless, and without much tact, the fight scenes in Naruto are actually another part of my favorite, or another reason that I love the show so much. The scenes are well done. They're well directed. They're fast-paced, and there's a good amount of tactics and strategies that are involved. At every single step, the opponents are constantly trying to gauge the enemy's fighting ability, and they're always fighting in accordance with what it is they've been able to gauge. They do explain every little thing, but it's after the fact, so it's not as bad as typical shonen. And a lot of times in Dragon Ball Z, you'll just be winding up that spirit bomb, and he'll just be explaining all the while why this spirit bomb is going to work, and what happens inevitably, it fucking misses. and it's always a Kamehameha wave that does the final blow, just to fucking inevitably. I don't know. No, I do not. he either misses, or the spirit bomb won't quite kill them. So ultimately, he's
he killed Majin Buu with a spirit bomb.
Here's what are we talking about?
All right. Naruto.
Yeah, my boy Kimimaro.
Oh yeah, you like fucking
Kimimaro. Cool. Well, your favorite character? I'll get to my favorite character is actually Shikamaru. Shikamaru. I like Kabuto. He's another example of a good antagonist.
3 characters that matter most.
Neji.
Shikamaru is a great character. The show gets a lot of shit for lack of character development, but there are actually a number of characters whose development is pretty. And
then Ino, because Ino fucks up Sean's bullshit Neji Hyuga nonsense in the fucking fighting games. I hope you remember that, Sean. I fucked you up as Ino.
No, I was Itachi.
Alright, good. Even better. Because we've been talking about Itachi being the most powerful motherfucker in the world. I fucked you up as Ino. Fuck you.
We were playing Ultimate Ninja Storm 2, and he was playing Ino, and I was Itachi, and he just kept spamming the flower bombs.
Flower bomb.
I was
anyway.
That's the only time Miller's ever beat me.
No, I beat you the times. Fuck off.
I love this show for a number of reasons. Reason number 1.
I already gave you a couple of reasons.
Well, I know.
I gave you 4.
The reason number whatever.
The tournament arc.
We used to, Sean and I and our brother Robert, we used to watch the show just at night, late at night, or kind of whatever time it came on in the evenings. It was one of the first anime we liked. I think another one was just Inuyasha. All we had to work with was what Adult Swim wanted to show. And it was or English. Toonami in this case with Naruto. So it was Cartoon Network all the way. This is the show that we watched. Originally, we were watching it in English, which was bad on us.
Believe it!
But it was every week. Our sister came in and she saw what we were watching. And she made fun of us and called us gay, and then whatever. But the fact is that we've actually been watching this show for well over 10 years at this point. We've been watching since the Chunin exams aired on Cartoon Network for the first time. So we go almost as far back to the beginning.
Believe it.
We ended up having to rewatch the very beginning, once we realized we were into it and wanted to start over. And Zabuza was another antagonist that's in the very beginning, who's one of the best. And the original arcs in Naruto, the first two rather, Zabuza arc and the Chunin exams, are kind of considered to just be overall the best arcs in either Naruto or Naruto Shippuden. So.
Yeah, I remember that. Right around the
good show. I think we all agree. We like Naruto, man. Naruto's good. It's timeless.
I know we don't reference it like enough during these podcasts and Normie impressions.
We gotta do better.
It really rarely, if ever, comes up, but it should just be said at least once. I think that everyone here, and Miller's probably the greatest fan of all. We all love Naruto. Okay, it's not pronounced Naruto, by the way. If you pronounce it like that, you're wrong. You should just honor kill yourself. I don't see any other way around it. It's Naruto. Thank you.
Naruto.
Miller doesn't shut up about it.
Miller never.
When he runs downstairs in the morning to make breakfast, he runs down with his arms behind his back.
Yeah. I asked him if he's making eggs, and he goes, "Believe it." I'm like, all right. Well, great. Can you make some for me? And he said, "Believe it," and then he didn't make some for me. So, you be the judge. Yeah.
Who's the the water dude that pals around with Sasuke and his little clan?
Suigetsu.
Yeah, he's also pretty fucking cool too. Otherwise, Kimimaro is my boy, and he could have fucked up anyone, but he just had AIDS, so he died.
But God, that must have been
not AIDS. Actually, it could have easily been AIDS. Who knows?
It sounded a whole lot like AIDS. AIDS or cancer.
Well, it sounded more like cancer. But AIDS, sure. I don't know what they had him hooked up to in treatment of AIDS, but I mean, obviously, of the two main characters, by the way, there's Sasuke and Naruto. Sasuke is clearly the better character. Naruto is just your typical. Yeah, what?
He's not clearly anything.
Neither of them are very good.
Sasuke's clearly Sasuke's a great character.
Sasuke has way more depth to him. Naruto is more just stereotypical protagonist.
Sasuke's character development is all over the place. It doesn't even make a whole lot of sense when you get right down and think about it.
As much as I shit on people for saying he's a whiny, unreasonable crybaby, he's gone through fucked up shit and deserves to be a whiny, unreasonable crybaby. But none of those characters are great. It's all about the villains in that show.
Sasuke's a great character. Fuck you guys. I think that his entire development was not perfect, but it made sense to me. I don't know what you mean.
It was a lot better in part 1. By the time it got to part 2, it was all over the place.
Putin's obviously just way worse.
I don't know. People say that, but I don't know.
Well,
the war is very well done.
Bad. Anyway,
the war is very well done.
I don't like zombies. I think people who are dead should stay dead.
It was like that time that they just totally undercut Payne's arc when they revived literally everyone who died, thus removing every consequence. Oh, this show sucks.
That was bullshit. I agree. Anyway, I'm not going to stand by that, but the war was well done.
Tedious.
Tedious.
Yeah, so I agree. On that note, Billy is sending us messages over Discord that he has to take a massive dump.
Well, that's the reason I typed this. I don't want to say it. Yeah, I have to go to the bathroom.
Alright, so we'll wrap this up. These have been our wonderful. Now, some random ass people are just messaging in on this Discord.
That's Bobby.
Okay, alright. Wonderful. These have been 3 of our favorite animes. You can look forward to me doing a more, maybe a 10 to 25, I don't know yet, sort of deal here. But, you can always catch all of our previous episodes. We've done 9. We're gonna be doing Black Clover after this airs. Until then, fuck off. Naruto's not all that great. Dragon Ball Z sucks. Kids on the Slope is awesome. Your Lion Apple's awesome. Your Rurouni Kenshin is pretty darn good. Avatar: The Last Airbender is worse than Korra. Steins Gate is great. Wolf's Rain Gate. I'm just slurring these words as I drink more and more. Wolf's Rain is great. Yu-Gi-Oh! I've never seen it and don't care to. Death Note, wonderful. Yu Yu Hakusho, I would really like to watch it. And Monster is also wonderful. Fuck off until next time.
It's so weird how